Kofi writhed on the hut's floor, his screams tearing through the night. Sweat drenched his trembling body as an unbearable pain twisted inside him. Alma watched in frozen horror as his swollen belly convulsed. Then, an unnatural wail echoed, chilling the air. Something was coming. The air in Oduro village was thick with the scent of burning firewood and roasted maize. Women sat outside their huts, weaving baskets, their laughter weaving into the hum of the evening. The men, weary from hunting and farming, gathered around the village square, exchanging tales of the day's triumphs. Kofi sat at the center, his muscular arms crossed over his broad chest. He was the strongest hunter in Oduro, his reputation stretching far beyond their land. He was also the loudest critic of women's so-called struggles. Childbirth. Kofi scoffed, tossing a bone into the fire. Women act like it's a battle. What is so difficult about bringing a child into the world? You lie down, push, and it's done. The men laughed, but some shook their heads. One of the elders, Baba Kwame, frowned. Kofi, do not mock things you do not understand. Kofi only grinned. I understand plenty, old man. That night, as the village settled into silence, a stranger arrived. No one saw him enter, but by morning his presence was known. He was a lean man with skin dark as midnight, wearing a long, flowing robe. He carried a wooden chest, bound with iron locks. His eyes, sharp and knowing, studied the villagers with unsettling calm. I am Dr. Mensa, he announced in a voice both smooth and commanding. I bring knowledge from lands beyond the rivers, beyond the mountains. The villagers gathered, eyes wide with curiosity. Science was not common in Oduro. The healer used herbs. The elders used wisdom. But a man claiming to have knowledge beyond both was a rare sight. What knowledge do you bring? Baba Kwame asked. Dr. Mensa smiled. Strength, power, the ability to surpass limits. Kofi, ever eager to prove his dominance, stepped forward. Tell me, stranger, can you make a strong man stronger? Mensa's gaze settled on him. I can make a strong man invincible. Kofi laughed. Then do it. The doctor placed a vial in Kofi's hands. The liquid inside was dark, swirling with colors that seemed to move on their own. This is the future, Mensa whispered. A gift of science. Kofi did not hesitate. He drank, and the world around him shifted. At first, Kofi felt nothing. He woke the next morning stronger than ever. His muscles felt firmer, his breath deeper. He laughed, showing off his renewed power, challenging men to wrestling matches, lifting heavy stones with ease. But then, something changed. A week later, Kofi woke with an ache in his lower belly. It was a dull pain at first, easily ignored. But as days passed, it grew sharper. Then came the nausea. He would wake in the middle of the night, stomach churning, rushing to the bushes to vomit. At first, he blamed bad meat, then exhaustion. But deep inside, unease took root. His appetite changed. Foods he once loved made him gag. His mood swung violently. One moment he laughed. The next, he snapped at his wife, Alma, for no reason. The worst came when Alma noticed the swelling. Kofi, she said one evening, touching his stomach, have you gained weight? Kofi frowned. He looked down. His abdomen, once rock-hard, was softer, rounder. Something was wrong. But the truth was more terrifying than he could ever imagine. Days turned into weeks, and Kofi's condition worsened. His belly swelled unnaturally fast. The pain in his lower back grew unbearable. Whispers spread to the village. The mighty hunter grows fat. Is Kofi cursed? Did he offend the gods? Unable to bear it, he sought out the village healer. She placed her hands on his stomach, pressing gently. Her eyes widened. Kofi, she whispered, there is something inside you. Panic clawed at his throat. What do you mean? She pressed her ear against his belly. A moment later, she gasped and stumbled backward. I hear a heartbeat, she said. The world tilted. No, Kofi rasped. That is impossible. But deep inside, he already knew. Something unnatural was happening, and Dr. Mensa was the key. Kofi stormed through the village, ignoring the gasps and murmurs. He found Dr. Mensa in his hut. calmly writing in a thick leather book. "What did you do to me?" Kofi roared. Mensa looked up, unbothered. "Ah, it has begun." Kofi grabbed him by the collar. "Explain." Mensa's lips curled into a smirk. "You wanted strength beyond limits. I gave it to you. The strength to do what no man has ever done before." Realization crashed over Kofi like a wave. "You made me pregnant?" Mensa shrugged. "Science has long sought to push boundaries. You, my friend, are the first." Kofi's body trembled. He wanted to kill Mensa right there. But something inside him lurched, a sharp, stabbing pain that made him double over. Mensa only watched. The process is irreversible. Kofi's breath came in ragged gasps. "Make it stop." Mensa leaned in. "Why? Are you afraid? You said childbirth was easy." Kofi felt his world unravel. This was no longer a nightmare. It was reality. Kofi collapsed onto his knees, clutching his stomach, as another wave of pain coursed through him. Sweat dripped down his face, his breath ragged and uneven. Dr. Mensa simply watched, his expression unreadable. "You were chosen for a great purpose, Kofi," Mensa said. "You are the first of your kind, the first man to create life within himself." Kofi's hand shook. This is unnatural." Mensa tilted his head. "Is it? Women have done this for centuries. You claimed it was easy. Now you understand." The words hit Kofi harder than any spear ever could. His pride, the very thing that defined him, was now a cruel joke. But worse than that, he was afraid. He staggered to his feet. "You will fix this." Mensa sighed, stepping closer. "Kofi, listen to me. What is growing inside you is not a disease. It is a miracle." Kofi grabbed a knife from the table, pressing it against the doctor's throat. "I will not ask again." Mensa didn't flinch. "You can kill me, but the process has already begun. There is no stopping it now." Kofi's grip tightened and loosened. He turned and ran. Ran from the truth. Ran from the nightmare. But the nightmare was inside him, and there was no escape. By the time Kofi reached his hut, his body felt heavier. He collapsed onto the floor, gripping his belly. Amma rushed to him. "Kofi, what is happening to you?" Tears burned his eyes. How could he tell her? His wife, the woman he had mocked for years, now looked at him with the same concern she had once begged from him. "Kofi," she whispered, voice breaking, "you're pregnant, aren't you?" He let out a shuddering breath. "I don't know what I am anymore." Amma sat beside him, silent for a long time. Then she did something that shattered him completely. She reached out and placed her palm on his swollen belly. For the first time, Kofi did not pull away. For the first time, he let himself cry. The news spread fast. By morning, the entire village knew. Kofi, the mighty hunter, the man who mocked women, was with child. The men whispered behind his back. The women stared with unreadable expressions. Some called it punishment. Others called it witchcraft. "Kofi has been cursed," one man shouted. "He is an abomination." The elders called meeting. Kofi stood before them, his heart pounding. Baba Kwame narrowed his eyes. "You brought shame to Oduro." Shame. The word cut deeper than any blade. Kofi clenched his fists. "I did not choose this." An elder scoffed. "You drank the stranger's potion. You let this happen." Kofi's breath hitched. No one understood. No one cared. He turned to the crowd, searching for Alma. She stood at the back, silent, his only lifeline, his only hope. The pains became unbearable. Kofi could no longer walk without struggling. His body betrayed him in ways he never thought possible. And then one night, the labor began. It started with sharp cramp, deep and twisting. Then another and another. He screamed, falling onto his hands and knees. Alma rushed to his side. "Breathe, Kofi. Breathe." But he couldn't. The pain was all-consuming, relentless, tearing him apart from the inside. A moment later, something moved within him. Something unnatural. Alma's eyes widened in horror. "Kofi, something is wrong." The hut filled with the sound of his screams. The village gathered outside, whispering, praying, fearing. And then, a single, Ear-piercing wail cut through the air. The cries of a newborn, but not a human one. Alma gasped. Kofi looked down and his world shattered. A deafening silence filled the hut. Kofi lay on the floor, his body drenched in sweat, trembling violently. His vision blurred as he forced himself to look down. Alma's hands were shaking, her breath coming in short gasps. Her eyes were wide with terror. "Kofi," she whispered, barely able to form words. Lying between his trembling legs was not a human child. It was something else. A small, writhing form covered in a slick membrane. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, veins pulsing underneath. Its limbs were thin, unnaturally long, curled in ways that defied nature. And its eyes, dark, endless voids, open and locked onto Kofi's. A deep, guttural sound rumbled from the creature's tiny throat. It was not a cry. It was something older, something wrong. Alma staggered back, pressing a hand to her mouth. This is not a child. Kofi's breath hitched. His entire body recoiled in horror. His stomach churned, and for the first time, he truly understood this was never meant to be. This was an abomination. Something was moving beneath its skin, shifting unnaturally. Its tiny mouth opened wider than it should have, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. Then it laughed, a sound that should never come from a newborn, a sound that sent a shiver down Kofi's spine. Alma screamed. Kofi's body moved on instinct. He reached for the knife. The creature moved faster. Before Kofi could react, the creature leaped. Not like a newborn, not like something weak. It latched onto Kofi's chest, its tiny fingers digging into skin with unnatural strength. Pain. Sharp, unbearable pain. Kofi roared, his hands clawing at it, trying to rip it off. But the creature held on. Its body was merging with him, sinking into his flesh like it was returning home. Alma grabbed a burning stick from the fire and swung. The creature shrieked, recoiling just long enough for Kofi to shove it away. It hit the ground, twisting, screeching. Alma's voice trembled. What is it? Kofi knew. It was not just his child. It was Mensa's experiment, and it was never meant to leave his body. The creature's cries echoed outside the hut, piercing the still night. Then came the voices, the villagers. They had heard everything. Baba Kwame's voice boomed. "What have you done, Kofi?" The crowd gathered, torches in hand. Faces twisted in fear and rage. Then they saw it. The thing lie on the ground, writhing, making unnatural sounds. "The gods have cursed him," a woman shrieked. "This is witchcraft. He is no longer one of us." Fear turned to fury. A stone flew through the air, striking Kofi's shoulder. Another hit Alma's leg. "Kill it," someone screamed. "Burn the monster." The torches moved closer. Alma's grip tightened on Kofi's arm. "We have to run." But Kofi couldn't move. His body was weak, broken, and in that moment, he realized the village would never accept him again. Dr. Mensa stood at the edge of the crowd, watching. Kofi's blood boiled. "You did this." Mensa's expression remained unreadable. "No, Kofi, you did this." Kofi's fist clenched. "You tricked me." Mensa shook his head. "I only gave you knowledge. You chose to drink." The words cut deep. Mensa stepped forward, looking at the creature. "It is not fully formed yet. If you had carried it longer, it would have been perfect." Kofi's stomach turned. The villagers closed in, torches raised. This was the end. Unless... Kofi's gaze flickered to Alma. She nodded. Without another word, she grabbed his hand and they ran. Into the darkness. Away from everything they had ever known. Days passed. Kofi and Alma wandered deep into the jungle. The village's fires long behind them. The creature was silent now, wrapped in cloth, barely moving. Kofi had wanted to kill it, but he couldn't, because despite everything, it was his. Alma kept her distance. What do we do now? Kofi had no answer. He had lost everything, his home, his honor, his identity. Now, he was just a man carrying a mistake he could never undo. And deep inside, he feared one thing more than anything else. The creature was growing, and one day it would wake. The fire crackled in the dead of night. Alma was asleep. Kofi sat alone, staring at the bundle in his lap. He could feel it breathing, slow, steady, growing stronger. A thought crept into his mind. A terrible, horrifying thought. Could he love it? Could he raise it? Or did he have to end this? Kofi picked up his knife. The creature stirred. Its eyes opened, and for the first time, it spoke. Baba. Kofi's breath stopped. Alma woke to the sound of the knife hitting the ground. Kofi was still staring at the creature. It had called him father, and he had no idea what that meant. The sun rose over the jungle. In the distance, smoke curled from unnatural village. The past was behind them now, but something else was ahead. Kofi stood at the river's edge, staring at his reflection. His body had changed forever. His life had changed forever. And now, so had the world, because the first man had given birth. And soon there would be more. Somewhere, far away, Dr. Mensa was smiling. The experiment was not over. It was only just beginning. What would you do in Kofi's place? Is this the end, or just the beginning? Let me know in the comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling tales.